Hello, Internet. My name is Ryan Ingram, and I am fortunate and blessed enough to have with me the author of The Wealthy Gardener, John Soforic. And if you haven't read this book already, I highly recommend it. I think this is probably and truly the best book written in the past decade, and I'm not being dramatic. I truly think that, and I am really looking forward to this interview. So, John, thank you so much for agreeing to be here.
Agreeing and glad to be here, Ryan. Thank you. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So, The Wealthy Gardener is a uh, phenomenal book. But I guess before we dive into the book, uh, I would like to get a little bit more insight on, who you are and, where you've been and how, like, what the events that led you to writing that book.
Sure. So I'm blue collar town, Ryan. I grew up here in Western Pennsylvania. My grandfather was a coal miner. That's the kind of family my dad came from. When my mother and father got together, they got married. They moved into a half a trailer, not a full trailer. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college. At the age of 24, I had a degree. I had $200,000 worth of debt in today's dollars. I came out of school. I was married within the first year. Within 3 years, I had two kids. My wife stayed home with them. By the age of 30, I had one thing figured out, brother. I was a wage slave in the sense that I woke up and I went to bed every day for just to provide food, shelter, clothing, and paying down this big, enormous, invisible student loan that nobody else saw. At the age of 30, I'm frustrated, and I was, I guess, at a place where a lot of people are, where it's just not going to happen the way you thought it was going to happen in life. And so I set some pretty big goals at that time. I set a goal to be financially free in my life, to just unchain myself from all of this. And it's just not financial freedom I was looking for. I was looking for financial power. I wanted to throw a fist back at this condition of life and just free myself. And so I set a pretty big goal for a monthly passive income at the age of 30. And I went to work. And over the next 2 decades, I earned that goal one day at a time. So at the age of 50, I was financially free. And I might even say I was financially powerful by that point. I retired from my chiropractic practice. I got into, I felt the need to teach the next generation what it was like, So here's my family being raised on the fruits of my labor. So it was necessary for me to instill in them the lessons that I learned along the way. I wrote a book called The Wealthy Gardener. It was an interactive process for my son and with my son. We talked about it. It took years, full time. Sometimes people talk about writing a book over 3 years, and what they're talking about is an hour here and there during their working week. I mean, this was 50 hours a week. Every day of my life, me and my son, we were getting into it. And so that book was completed. I felt like I passed along my own life lessons through a philosophy book, an action book on financial achievement called The Wealthy Gardener. And at that point, we self-published. It was a big decision, and it kind of took off. It found some roots among the common man, the common people in our country, the middle class and the upper class. Famous people have talked about that book. And so it found some traction. It was translated into 6 languages, became a bestseller, hit number 46 worldwide on Audible, and here we are.
When did that happen? When did it hit number 46?
That was first year out, man. I was chasing Michelle Obama for a while. She had a book out called Becoming, and the Audible version, which is the narrator really did a good job there. Dennis Kleiman, he just did a sacred effort, in my opinion. But in 2000, end of 2018, it was number 46 worldwide. Yeah.
Nice. So I really want to back up just a little bit more about you, but first, before I forget to ask this question later on, for the Audible version of your book is recorded with a British accent. Do you have any reason for that? Like, what was your
Yeah,
Why'd you land on that?
I needed him, man, because I always like those nature shows. To be honest with you, sometimes this is kind of how it works. Where you know David Attenborough, right? And they start talking about, and you see these shows, and there's a wisdom to the sound of that voice. To me, at least that's my perception. And Dennis, man, Dennis Kleinman was my narrator, and I wanted him. He had a great soul. Dennis is a good guy. You needed a soul for the character of the wealthy gardener. This book is a little bit about fiction, a little bit about nonfiction, so you had to capture the character of that person.
Right.
Dennis, to me, he sounded wise, and he sounded like he had the big heart. So the
Mhm.
British accent, to me, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess I like the nature shows. It comes down to something so simple as that, man.
that's fun. So at 24, when you graduated, what was your degree in?
I was a chiropractor. I graduated as a chiropractor. Um, my wife was a chiropractor, and as well. And so I took on two debts into mine, and then within the first year, we got married, and then we quickly had a child. So she wanted to stay home, which is, um, if you can provide that for your family, that's a great thing. If your wife wants that, and I said yes, I can do this. Well, it's a hard road, man. There's no dual income here, and so yeah, that's how it worked.
So how did you decide on being a chiropractor? What was your motivation for that?
Ryan, I think whenever you're 18 and you have a gun to your head and you have to figure out something, I was going to be an engineer at that point. I was good at math, and I was going to school. I went to school, college, probably to be a basketball player. I was a thoughtless kid. I was good at basketball. I scored 30 points a game. I went to college. It was a big shock to me that I wasn't going to go to the NBA. I was just dumb. And so you have to, well, by God, you got to choose a career. So let's choose a career. I checked the box off for electrical engineer, but I was confused, like a lot of people are. I didn't give it a lot of thought. So why a chiropractor? I walked into a chiropractic visit with my dad one time, and I was probably 21, the opportune time of my life. I'm making decisions. I'm confused. He went to a chiropractor, got well in one visit. Long story short, I saw a boat in the backyard. I saw chiropractors part-time hours. It looked like freedom to me, and that's how things work. It's just, it was crazy. It was just at the time I was thinking a lot. Here's a chiropractor. Looks like he's doing pretty good. He's got a home office. He's got a boat in the backyard. He's got part-time hours, and chalk it up. 5 years later, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not kidding. That's about the extent of it.
Yeah, uh, that's that's fun. So I guess what's interesting about that is when you were really struggling, you were a chiropractor with debt, and then you made goals, and you didn't change professions, right? At 50, when you achieved financial freedom, you were still a chiropractor.
I kept the day job, brother. No question about that. Like that's so, like, when you have a family, that's part of the constant. Sometimes you're gonna work the day job
Hmm.
to pay for the babies. You got your food, shelter, clothing. You still have your debt. So what are my choices?
Hmm.
It's not like you can chase rainbows at that point. You're looking to earn your way out. That's how you do it. And so, yeah, the day job was part of that earning, no question about it.
Hmm.
So, but then in addition, in my free hours, that's what I had to grab a hold of. Let's say if the job is my regular hours, I had to look to the free time for my overtime hours. There's got to be some time in there for me to get ahead. I had to grab a hold of a little bit of that, and probably 20 hours a week of that I had to take back from just the whirlwind of life and say, this is how I have to gain direction.
Hmm.
That's the price, no question about it.
I guess what I find fascinating about that is whenever I started to learn all of these things, just personally, I did a career change. So I went from law enforcement into more of a sales and commission only thing. So it was a career change that had the ability to make more income. Whereas with you, there was clearly an internal change because you were able to keep the same career and still build the same uh, financial freedom. So I guess I just wanted to make a note of that because I guess the principles in The Wealthy Gardener were you learning those along the time where you were struggling at 25 to financial freedom at 50?
Nothing teaches you like pain, man. And when you go through the tough times of life, that's when you dig deep for some sort of solutions. No doubt about it. And I think to your point. I think you're right. There's there's different ways to do this. I evaluated a career change. Should I try different things? Should I pursue a medical degree? Possibly. Should I do this or that? Uh, I think that at that time I wasn't willing to take the financial hit of going back to school at that age of 30, whenever I have three other people relying upon me for income. Those are the choices of adulthood. So that income right there, I mean, it wasn't great. It was, but it was maybe 105, I think 105,000. I'll disclose it. I think that was what my average was at that time. Now, I'm not complaining about that, but a lot of two dual income families, they combine an income and they beat that. That was mine. And that was my base. I had to earn on top of that base to get ahead, because eventually you figure out that for me to get to financial freedom, I got to own things that make money, assets that generate cash flow. Well, that doesn't happen without excess money. So you have to figure out that whole formula, that strategy. How do you earn more? How do you spend less? And what investments do you make? And it's all part of that chess game right in front of you called life.
Mm-hmm. So at your chiropractic office, so you've mentioned that you recaptured some off hours in order to start building your real estate portfolio. Now, did you also change the way in which you approached your chiropractic office?
I would say I changed that to the degree that you wouldn't see it from the outside, but I would say that I went all in a little bit more. Uh, there's nuances to this kind of stuff. Sometimes you can be at a job and you can be given 60% of your focus and your energy and your intensity, and you're there. Sometimes you can be given 95% and you're deep in, you're present, you're mindful. I would say that I got really, really mindful after the age of 30. I drilled deep. And so, yeah, I started trying to figure out within my practice. It's not like I didn't treat patients before. It's not like I treated them later in a different way. I would spend my time with people, uh, but I zoned in more. And when I talk on podcasts, people will sound like that's nothing, and it's something. It's your depth of concentration, whether you're there, whether you're present. Um, it's like whenever you have a job, a boss can tell if you're in or you're out. How deep are you in? How deeply are you engaged? That did change. My hours had to expand eventually because I zoned in and I imagined things. I used my mind to start focusing on that practice, getting busier. Can't tell you how important that was. That phone starts ringing, the more you're zoned in on what you're doing. And people say, well, that's the law of attraction, sitting on the couch waiting for checks. I said, I don't have any time for cynicism. I don't know how to pay for a pizza at times, sometimes in my life. I'm zoned in and my phone is ringing. You can say what you want. This is working to me, because when I focused my mind on the things I wanted most, I found that those things started coming to me. That's a fact.
Mhm. That that's really cool. So in parts of The Wealthy Gardener, you refer to the chiropractic office. So I guess in this book, are you the wealthy gardener? Because at the end of the book, it's kind of spoiler alert here, but the wealthy gardener, passes on. So clearly you didn't do that.
Now, the wealthy gardener. Okay, so that's a fictional tale, and
Mhm.
so if you've read a lot of books, in my understanding, one of the things that impresses me so much is that you've done the same thing I've done. You immersed yourself into the subject of finance, into you went to school. You have a virtual class on how to get ahead in life, and you said I believe you read 400 books in a couple of years. Okay, if you've done that, like I have, you realize there's a lot of dry books out there, and some of these things are like uh, uh, some of the finance books are kind of like reading a cookbook mixed with a math book, and it's about as fun as walking through the desert for hours without drinks. It's like it's dry.
Mhm.
So if you write a book on finance and nobody cares and nobody reads it, and especially I'm doing it for my son, you got to make it engaging. You got to bring it home to say, well, why do I care? And so I created, in the vein of The Richest Man in Babylon, which was an very influential book for me. It spoke to me. It reached me in a way through this fictional story. That's what I was after with The Wealthy Gardener. I wanted to entertain and engage and reach. That's the point. So there's no Wealthy Gardener character that it exemplifies. If anything, he's just a caricature for wisdom. That's all. He's
Nice.
the Yoda. He's the Yoda in my story. That's all.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, last question before we really get into the Wealthy Gardener, but how did you determine that real estate was a worthwhile endeavor during your recaptured off work hours?
How to decide that? Well, first of all, you have to figure out. I think most people will have to come to the point sooner or later is, where's my money invested? Where's it going to work? You'll have to figure that out. That is the end formula. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have that money. So our first formula is how to get the money. And that's always the question. Even when, you're 10 years into it, you always burn up the money. And so that's a good problem to have. How to get into the investing of money. For me, I could sit down and say that the stock market, let's say, that's where I come from, is just traditional. I can go into 10% returns or 8% returns of the stock market, but it looks to me like you're talking about a 3 or 4% roll in retirement as far as an extraction. Let's say if I want $30,000 a year as a financial number for my retirement, and I'm not saying that's my number. I looked a lot bigger than that. 30,000 at 3%, you would need $1 million in the bank, in your stock market, liquid, to be able to live on that. Well, I'll tell you what, man, when you don't know how to save money, that's a tough spot to be in, figuring out how many million you need in a couple of years. And so I was starting with a lot of the disadvantages. So for me, I could say that a duplex in my area, I could see this because of the education. I could see that maybe I could build that 3,000 through duplexes a lot easier than through the stock market. If you compare the two, and I loved the idea at the time. I remember thinking, I need something that will keep up with inflation. Okay, that's real estate. I need something that can bring residual income. Okay, that's real estate. I need something. I love the tax benefits of real estate. Okay, that's real estate. And I wasn't sure, but I stuck my toes in that water and I started doing a little bit of real estate to see if I liked it. Well, it turns out I like that. I can do that. I can control that. I don't like the fact that somebody's going to sneeze in China and cause my stock to drop 20% tomorrow. I hate the lack of control of that game. However, in the real estate game, I can predict where I'm going to be next year. I can predict it a lot better. So that's how I got into it. I saw the opportunity, and in my area, not being San Francisco, I could see that there is margins and there's house values to rent ratios, things like that work really well for real estate. It made sense. It's math.
So when you got out of college, your chiropractic office was that what was in Illinois, and then you moved back to Pennsylvania for the housing market? Is that right?
I did. I made a large move, and so did you. If I recall, we were talking ahead of time. That's what the unseen stuff behind it all. People will say that I can't. There's no, there's no extra income. I can't make any choices in my life. Don't talk to me about lack of choices in your life. You know, I see a smile on your face too, because you came from North Carolina to Dayton. I came from Chicago to Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. All right, it's a whole different world out here for me, and so I made a huge change, and I had a really busy practice in Chicago. My accountant said, I will never equal after I move what I have here. Well, yeah, he's going to lose my business, so he's going to tell me that. So I move across the country, and all of a sudden I was working 6 days a week, but all the money I made on Saturday, that all went towards my savings, because now there's a different economic equation. But it didn't happen without a big move. I sold a practice. I sold a house. We moved across the country. We started over. That's a big move. And I look at you and I say, well, there's a warrior who did the same thing. So I'm impressed by that, because I know what it goes into that decision that nobody really sees as the price. Those big decisions in the background that aren't visible.
Right. I think, yep. I think, that's one of the, and on this YouTube channel, that's one of the most common kind of objections I get. It's like, well, you can't do this in my market. My market, there aren't houses at this price. It's just like, well,
Yep.
you're not immovable. You're not poured in concrete.
I love Jim Rohn. He says, well, you're not a tree.
Yeah.
You don't have roots. You don't have it. He says, you can change, you can move. You're not a tree. You know how he speaks. And yeah, it just takes some kahunas. Do you have that?
Yeah. Now, how did you decide on Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania? Was that strictly for the real estate, or were there any other factors?
I grew up in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. I came back to family. I have a big family back here. Latrobe is where I set my practice up. That's people know of Latrobe from Arnold Palmer, Mr. Rogers. And so it's just right beside us here. And so it wasn't that much of a creative move outside of the fact that this is where I grew up. I grew up in a small town, and I came back to it. And to be honest with you, I take pride in that. My dad started out as a janitor at a printing company. In this area. He became the CEO over the course of his lifetime. So we have a history of people, good salt of the earth people who live in a small town. I'll take that any day. I'm not part of Silicon Valley, and I'm not part of that group where, if that, to me, that looks like the Hollywood of business. It's kind of make believe. Around here, we earn it one day at a time, and we can still achieve the things we can achieve, if not more, if we put our mind to it. And that's what I did.
Absolutely. So your chiropractic office, and then also your real estate portfolio, what were the immediate goals that you set for your real estate portfolio during this, or how did you arrive at, how did you determine what financial freedom was for you?
I know this. Okay, when you have 2 kids and a wife and a income, it's not too hard to figure out what you live on. Okay, you start there. And so, what's the number? Well, how much do you burn? That's my question. So, I knew for sure that my family was burning about 70,000. That was the burn pile for me. And if I didn't make that, I was in trouble. I wasn't free. So I needed that. I said that, well, that's the spendable. So now you need to earn more than that because there's going to be taxes coming out of it. So now, you round up. I figured in my area, $120,000 passive annually buys you all the freedom you need. And what I mean, I can travel to Europe. I can do whatever I want. That's freedom, and that's power. You need a little bit of a cushion to a margin of safety, because you're going to be wrong, and your kids are going to have problems, and the car is going to break down, and the roof needs fixed, and all that kind of stuff. So you can't just hit exactly that number. You got to shoot above it. but I didn't just want, like, I was frustrated in my life at that point of age of 30. And so I knew that freedom for sure was 120. I wanted power. I wanted to not have to think about money. I wanted freedom and power. So I doubled it. I set a goal for 240. And I set a goal for 240. When if I look back, I say, man, that's a pretty arrogant, audacious, delusional person setting that goal, because I was nowhere near it. But I hit it. I got it. And so when you sometimes you surprise yourself if you just stay with it and don't let it go out of your mind. I would have never hit 240, 20,000 a month if I didn't set that goal. And I did set the goal. But I learned a lot of things along the way, and that went into the Wealthy Gardener.
Mm-hmm. So did you flip properties in addition to building a portfolio?
Sure. Sure did, Ryan. First of all, I just tiptoed into the water slowly because I had to figure out if this was something I wanted. You don't have a crystal ball to know this is it. I didn't care if it was car washes, whatever. I wanted the residual income. It could be a Subway. I don't care. So I found that, I went into the rental real estate, but that's a cash eating machine. And people that haven't done it don't know it. You're going to put money in. It eats cash. During the growing of it. It's a monster. So you're always running out of money. I don't care what your income is. You're running out of money. So I had to figure out, okay, I'm renovating these houses and taking loans out, taking loans out, and I can see the appraised value and how much I have into it. And I thought, well, what if I just sell it for the damn appraised value once? Well, I did. I sold one instead of renting it. And I'm a hoarder. I hoard rentals. But I sold one, and I after taxes took home $15,000. And the guys did the work. Contractors worked for me. And I saw that all of a sudden, that was the first $15,000. I never put my stamp on it with my own time. And so I really raised my eyebrows, and I said, let's see if I can do this again. And one after the other. It's not too sexy here in Western PA. You're looking for about $15,000 to $20,000 per house. Okay. That's what you're after in terms of flipping profits. This isn't California where it's $200,000 flip margins. I flipped. So now I'm a chiropractor. This is my offense. I'm a chiropractor. I'm overseeing the management of these properties, flipping, and I'm developing a rental business. It's everything I got went into the rental business. And the one thing I did that was unique, if you look around, is I never increased my lifestyle. I never increased my lifestyle to match my increased income. It all went over to the freedom fund, the rental fund. It was untouchable to me. That's how it happened. No doubt about it.
Nice. And this whole time you were doing this, did you also manage your rental properties?
Absolutely. And by manage, keep in mind, we're so soft these days. We're talking about managing these rental properties. Managing means a tenant texts me on a complaint, on an issue. Well, I text the contractor. All right. That's it. Like there used to be a day when there weren't these phones around. There weren't computers, and you used to run out there and do this stuff yourself. And it was just on this phone all the time. And you get a message on your phone at home, your landline. Yeah. So if you're saying, did I move my thumb around? Yeah, I did. And do I have a software here that adds a lot? Like you laugh, right? Because nobody gets it, man. I started a clinic when we used to add it up by hand. There weren't computers back then, man. And then now it's just, we're so soft. Yeah. I'm sitting on the beach and I'm on vacation and my wife says, why do you got to take that call? I said, Patty, my grandfather was a coal miner 6 days a week. I'm moving my thumb. Is it okay with you? Because it's paying for this vacation. No, we got to straighten that out every now and then with the family.
All right.
Because that's what I call management. Did I manage it that way? Yeah. I moved my thumb around a little. Sure.
That's a good way to put it. I recently took property management in-house, my brother and I. right when we were around the 70 property mark, and I wouldn't change anything that I did up to that point, but I definitely spend less than about 3 hours a week actually managing our like 80 plus rental properties. And it's all because what you said, the technology is there. I mean, the work orders come in via the software that we use, and I email them to
Exactly.
contractors, and they contact the tenants and put it on the schedule, and it's pretty seamless. I'm
What
gonna
it
steal
is.
that one from you. Moving my thumbs around.
Well, it's important because what is work ethic? Oh yeah, you're working. What? Really? What? Because if this is work, count me in. All right, touching this. I'll tell you, it's a funny story around what you said. Just as an extrapolation of what we're talking about. I saw Elon Musk get interviewed. I mean, you're talking SpaceX and Tesla and all these just phenomenal, bizarre, amazing accomplishments from Musk. And he was asked by one of the podcasters. He said, "How do you do it all? How do you manage it?" Because well, Elon Musk said, "Well, I have a cell phone, and you can do a lot of work on emails and stuff with a cell phone." And I'm like, looking at this interview. Oh, Elon Musk, you have a cell phone. We didn't know you had a cell phone. Well, that must be how you compete with Russia in the satellite orbit business because you have a cell phone. I didn't know that. Okay, that explains everything. But it is like that because you have these advantages. When my parents were growing up as adults, I mean, my dad was out there taking calls. They're running around. They're putting for rent signs in the window. It's just a different world. We can suck it up, and we can just make things a lot more efficient if we get organized. Yeah.
Yep. So did you mentioned working full time on The Wealthy Gardener for a few years. When did that process start?
I would say that the initial impetus, the thoughts start happening as soon as you get close to your goals. My son was just coming out of college, so he's going to enter the world as I did. I entered the world with just this at the age of 24. He was 20. Now, if you imagine where I am, I just struggled to gain that financial goal of my life. All the books I've read over the course of decades, living in the real world, you're a warrior, and you've actually won. I didn't have a book to give to him. I didn't have that book. And I had about 20 books I could offer, but I didn't have that book. And I said, I don't know, is it possible? Maybe it is. I said, I think I could do this. And so I had this idea that I could put together everything I learned in one book. And it was just going to be between a father and a son. I was going to pass along my life lessons, and he could do with that what he wants. And so that's how it evolved. He was coming out of college. I was coming out of work. I was getting close to that retirement goal. He was getting close to the start of his journey. And so that's how it happened. What is a book outside of a bunch of ideas and thoughts and principles? How about if we put that all into one space? And how about if we make that entertaining so it actually engages him, and you put your heart into it, and you stand up and you try and you do what you can do for your generation, and not just going to die with the lessons in you. That was the idea. There was a lot learned there, and I wanted to pass that on to my own son. I could have never done it without him. And that's when it happened, when I was about 50 years old.
So how you were 50 in 2018, or that's when it started?
Boy, to do the math, it was probably 49, and I was going towards 50. 50 was the goal, and I did beat it. So yeah, it was around that ballpark of. No, 2018 is when the book was finished. So 2015 would have been the start of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what is real estate the main source of your passive income now?
Main source. Yes. Yes.
How many,
And
how many,
keep in mind, I'm not in love with real estate. People say, "Oh, that's your passion." I said, "No, I'm in love with the cash flow." I mean, that's what it's all about. To me, the freedom that can come from many different forms. The question is, is real estate the main form of my? Yeah, I have 110 units right now. I have 110 units paid off, though. So that's a different game. People sometimes say, I have 5,000 units. Well, I manage $2 billion. All right, well, I hear you, but how much are you keeping? Let's talk about that, because it comes down to that. So that's the goal. Yeah, real estate's the chief of it. I mean, right now, I do have liquid money as well in the market, those sorts of things.
And I guess back to the book and structuring that with your son, that started via emails, I believe, is
Yeah.
what you said. And how was that structured at all, or how did the first email come about?
It's a good story, because you might look at the book now and say that this was all conceived as this cohesive idea, and that's not how it works. Imagine if you have 4 children yourself. Imagine if one of them's in college. Trust me when I tell you that your kids will stop seeing you as the knight in shining armor, and they can judge you as being a little delusional at some point. They become your equal. And so here I have this. Well, at least they think they're your equal. They might not know they're not just yet. They have to do a little learning. And so my son's in college, and he's probably going into his junior year of college. It's a time when you're kind of confident as a young man. And so I'm thinking about doing this book. I can't imagine saying, Mike, I want you to sit down with me for years and go over my lessons of my life. I mean, could you imagine how that's going to fly? So instead of that, I said, I worked on an email, and I worked on the first chapter, and I was just trying to formulate what this would be about. Chapter 1, I was unsure. I'm uncertain. I didn't write a book before this. And so it took me probably 30 days. I'm struggling, man. Like Hemingway says, writing is just sitting down and bleeding. I understand. I gave it. And so after 30 days, I said, this represents an idea that's worthy. And I packed this off into an email. I sent it to him, and I said, Mike, I'm thinking about writing a book. I said, feel free to criticize, tell me this is stupid. I don't need this, man. I worked all my life, and I got to where I got to. This new goal, it's not necessary. Could you put your eyes on this? Give me your real opinion. Came back later, Ryan, I'm nervous. I'm 50 years old, but I'm as nervous as a teenager on his first date. I sent this thing out, and I don't know what kind of feedback's coming. He calls me back that night, and he says, Dad, I honestly, and I'm like waiting. He says, I honestly messed it up. He says, this is worthy. You should do this. This is the quest. He says, I saw you do this in my life. He was a part of it. He was part of the whole climb. He goes, do it. He goes, I'm in 100%. And so that started the ballpark. And I would send him an email. I would ask him for criticism, not praise. Make this better. Let's talk about this. He'd fire back. He's merciless. And so we're going back and forth. And that's how the whole thing evolved. I certainly had a big structure. I had a unique idea that I could interweave all the principles in his fictional book, not unlike the richest man in Babylon. And it gained a life of its own, and it kept him engaged the whole way. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So this whole thing took place in emails over the past, over 3 years.
Yeah. I used to live to Sunday, brother. I would write tight missives, tight chapters I would try to get 2 of these out every week. I'm writing 50 hours a week to get 8 pages down. It's easy to write 20 pages. It's hard to write tight. That's the challenge. So I would get 2 out a week. He would come back with his fancy way of bringing back these things on Google Docs, and marking it all up and stuff like that, stuff the old man doesn't know about. And we would talk about it. Sometimes he'd come back with valid points. He'd push back, sometimes I need to explain myself more. And as an author, if a person doesn't understand you, it's not their fault, it's yours. You got to come back and explain it more clearly. So through this process, in a sense, he was a pseudo editor. And at the same time, he's my son. And this was a love song. And we basically went back and forth, and he knows what I know when it's all over.
Nice. Now, how were any of the back and forth between you and your son kind of encapsulated in the conversations between the gardener and the Jimmy character?
You know what? They would be, not really. It would be like, imagine if you made up a story of 4 characters, 5 characters. Well, Jimmy was going to be the character. There's a character called Jimmy, and he's my representative of an ambitious person. He's willing to learn. He's willing to do. He's capable. He's also capable of doing. He'll sacrifice for a period of time to get the things he wants in life. He's ambitious. There's a character called Fred. He's looking for meaning in life. He's retired. And you know, Fred just retired too quickly. He still has dreams in his heart. But he's an old guy, and he's hanging out with old guys who aren't doing anything, and they're coasting, and that's just making him miserable. The wealthy gardener, that's a personification of wisdom. He kind of understands what life is about. He knows how to move it forward. At the same time, he understands that, you know, there's more to life than just money. He understands the whole game. And so he was my wisdom guy. There's different personas. I had a guy, Jared, who says he wants things, but you know, you can't see by witnessing him what he really wants. You got to be able to watch your actions to know what a person wants. Jared, you could watch your actions and think he wants nothing. And so there's that disconnect between intention and execution with him. So you make these characters in order to make your points. And I found it easier or more deep, more enriching to use that as a story to show you what can happen, to show my son what can happen with wrong and right choices, wrong and right actions, using time, not using time, that sort of stuff. You know, that's how I used a story to teach through a parable.
Mhm. Well, I think you did a really great job. I'm smitten with the entire book. So thanks for that. And I guess, you know, you have retired once, and you have now, you know, you immediately committed to doing another giant goal of writing a book. So what's next on the horizon for you? Because you're kind of proving out the concept that man's
Yeah.
made to work.
You know, Ryan, okay. So let me fine tune that one. Man is made for meaning. I will tell you, I will believe. And you know, people that are so busy with work don't understand always what that means, because there's this delusion that once I get my freedom's the end goal. Well, I can tell you there's a challenge to freedom for people. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been my own boss, quote unquote. That usually means you have 1,000 bosses, not just one, as an entrepreneur. You get to this point where you have freedom. Okay, now what? I'm telling you, freedom for a lot of people, I see they can do it wrong. They can get really miserable, and they can get complacent. They can get depressed. They can start struggling. What's the meaning of life? I was always clear about the fact that, why do you want freedom? Why do I want? Well, I had some things to do in my life before I jump in the ground and before I call it a day. There's some things I wanted to do, and I didn't see this on the horizon. But you know, sometimes you have to do things and say, well, what's the feedback here? You know, I've had some pretty good feedback from this book. What's coming up next? I would say that the feedback I get from people is they want the wealthy gardener wrapped up into an action book. And so I kind of have a template for this. In my own studies, I recall, you're familiar with Napoleon Hill's work, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're a well-read guy. So he wrote The Law of Success, big, thick book. I'm a reader. I have still never made it through that thing. That's like a 1,200 pager or something. And it's dry and it's all over the place. It's a big book. And then he wrote Think and Grow Rich, which was his condensation of that book. It's actions. Well, I wrote The Wealthy Gardener. Thank God. I hope it's nobody considers that to be such a big unreadable book, but it is a philosophy of financial success. It's a way of life type of book. Well, this next one is going to be called The Wealth Essentials, 12 Steps to Grow Rich in 5 years. People want to talk about, what do I have to do to put the pedal down in a temporary period of time? They're willing to do that. People will sacrifice. If they know the bargain going in, they'll make the bargain. It's just like going to school. What do I have to do to become an MD? Man, let's talk about the next 5 years. What do I want to do to turn my life around? Let's talk about 5 years. I think that a book needs to be written by a person who's done it, a person who can empathize with the struggle of the common man, who's actually walked in those shoes and can therefore really advise a lot better than somebody who's just trying to extrapolate all the information from everybody else. And just maybe all those years of climbing that mountain puts me to a point where I can reach a person in a way who's out there striving right now. That striver. The next thing I got coming on is that book right there. So I don't look any further.
That's awesome. And I want to unpack a few things there. I first find it fascinating. I think I may have missed something, that someone would read The Wealthy Gardener and then request an action book. I feel like The Wealthy Gardener is a phenomenal action book if you just personalize what you said. So,
you know what, Ryan? Sometimes you got to put it on a spoon and feed people. I thought so too, man. I thought so too.
gotcha. Well, I guess on that same token, who's your ideal? I guess when you were writing this book, who's your ideal audience that you were kind of writing to?
My son. My son.
Mhm.
When I think of a person who's capable, who has ambition, who's a good person, has his head on straight, willing to take a punch and still keep moving forward. That person, no question. My son, without that influence of Sundays writing Sunday to Sunday to Sunday, I couldn't have finished it myself. I've built a pretty good stress tolerance and ability to push myself through obstacles in life. But that is a challenge that writing a book like I did over 3 years, given that amount of time with no certainty of any kind of value or worth when it's all over. See, I was getting feedback weekly, and that's all I needed to know. And that's what kept me going. It sustained the fight of that book. There's a lot that went into that. I would say that my son was my reader, no doubt about it. But then that 25-year-old guy, I was him. I was a 30-year-old guy striving. I was a 35-year-old guy striving, 40, 45. I was there, man. I climbed that mountain. And so maybe I'm the ideal reader too. What book would I need along the way from start to finish? This is it.
So are you going to keep with the Wealth Essentials book? Are you going to keep the same target audience? Just make it a little bit more
You
actionable,
know, you
is your words?
Yeah, let's say this, Ryan. You read the book, so in the end, you gave the spoiler alert. Where the wealthy gardener, he's trying to get something done before he dies. He has some unfinished business, and then he kind of passes that torch along to a young character. His mentee is named Jimmy. Well, Jimmy now becomes the character who's going to teach the troubled teens at a juvenile delinquent center, right? Well, I've had people say, well, what happens to Jimmy now? So let's say this. Let's say Jimmy's turn. It's Jimmy's turn to step up and to take on the progress of the wealthy gardener. So without any more spoiler alerts, Jimmy's going to be the main character. I'm still going to try to put this in a format that is entertaining. I don't want a combination of a cookbook and a math book where it's just dry formulas for personal finance. I'm going to try to engage, and I'm going to try to make the points of what's essential. It's this wealth essentials. What can you not do? That's the question. What can you not do?
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm a huge fan of that philosophy on like the short-term sacrifices over like a defined 5-year period, and, really digging deep, staying focused, getting the immediate, monthly, weekly, whatever you need feedback to keep going until you reach whatever goals you set for yourself for those 5 years. I think that book is.
Can I add to that, Ryan?
For sure.
Can I add to that right now? Because I want to say this. One of the reasons I really want to be on your podcast is if you would just bullet point where you were in North Carolina and take it back 5 years. Were you there in North Carolina 5 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. Bullet point that and talk about what happened from North Carolina to Dayton to where you are right now. Your life there to your life now. People really underestimate the value of 5 years, how you can transform everything in 5 years. Can you do that? Where were you 5 years ago? Where are you now? What happened in between? That's an amazing story. And that's exactly it.
Oh, that's fun because my wife and we just had our 5-year anniversary on Saturday. So great.
Wow.
I know exactly where I was 5 years ago. So I just met my wife. I just married my wife. I was in law enforcement. She was an assistant principal. She made somewhere around $60,000 a year. I was making $44,000 a year. I bought a house when I was 23 that she moved into, and I did like a pseudo house hack. I had a roommate that lived with me, and when my wife and I got married, she moved into that house. We bought 17 acres not far, and we started building a house. And then, she got pregnant, and we realized it was really important for us that she be a stay-at-home mom. So I was then tasked with the ability, like, how do I make an additional 60,000? Just because the way that we stacked our lives, I wouldn't have been able to pay for the house that we were building on my income alone. Now, I also think it's worthwhile in stating that whenever I was 18, so I started law enforcement at 21. Whenever I was 18, I got a hold of the book by David Bach, The Automatic Millionaire. And the main takeaway that I got from that book was take the decision to save out of your hands. So I did that. Whenever I got my first job, I immediately started saving 50%. So the entire time I was a cop, I saved 50% or greater of my income. When I left, I was saving somewhere around 67% of my income because I never gave myself a raise. I was making like 32 or 33,000 when I started. And then when I left, I was at 44. So every time I got a raise, I just shoved the equal amount into savings. So we could have done it on my law enforcement salary, but we would not have been able to save any money. We would have been paycheck to paycheck. And at that point, I'd always kind of considered myself to be a high-achieving, high-performing individual. And I was really perplexed. I felt like less of a man, kind of the similar sentiments that you mentioned. I've got a family, I've got responsibilities, I need to make it work. So I started reading up to one book per day. I honestly stopped doing anything remotely related to law enforcement. I pulled my patrol car in between like the sheds that are on the side of the road for sale. And I started reading one book per shift. And I committed to doing that until I figured out how to make money. So I realized that even though I really enjoyed law enforcement at the time, I was only trading my time for money, and I could never get ahead that way because at the end of the day, I've only got so much time, and how much time I have would never equal an excess amount of money. So my first goal was to break that. And because we were so frugal, we had, I don't know, I think we started with somewhere around 110,000 in like our savings and, retirement accounts and whatnot. So I knew that we had a decent cushion for me to go off, do something crazy. And in reading the books, I also learned about like the wealth formula or the future value of a dollar, to be precise. So in trying to internalize that, I realized if ever I were to do something crazy, if ever I were to be quote unquote, risky in a decision, it should be in my younger years where I still have time on my side to where I can financially recover from a giant mistake. So I decided to leave law enforcement. Oh, this was also around the time that I think this was in 2016 that I was leaving. So there was a little bit of, law enforcement started being seen unfavorably. So I knew that based on my, previous resume that I had, law enforcement would always be hiring. So I could easily walk back into that job if I needed to. So I decided to get a commission sales job and just try my hand at that. So we found a life insurance company. They had several different territories available nationwide. My wife and I sat down and we, since she was about to have a kid, we decided that I would go somewhere where she had some sort of family or support system. So she just wasn't getting thrown into the wild. Um, so we decided on Dayton, Ohio. And when I started in law enforcement in Durham, North Carolina, you could buy any home for like 10 or 15,000 in the bad side of town. And whenever I was leaving law enforcement, those homes were going for like $100,000. So when I get up here to Dayton, I'm, working very diligently. I'm making a decent income. My income started going to $10,000 and $20,000 a month. Um, I kept my living expenses the same, similar to what you said. And I realized that the real estate market here was very reminiscent of what Durham's used to be. So each of these homes were selling for $15,000, $20,000. I called some people that I met that were in real estate in Durham, and they said, honestly, if knowing everything I know now, if I were you, I would buy as many of those as you possibly can. And even if it's just throwing roofs on them, keeping them secure and waiting for the market to turn, you'll still be better off in a few years. So I tried to heed to that advice. And that was the plan that I've been working ever since. So when I moved up here, I moved up here specifically to work. My wife stayed in Durham for about 6 or 7 months before she moved up here as well. So during that time, I made it a point not to socialize, not to go out and meet friends or anything like that. I truly was up here to work to create a better life for my family. So day in, day out, 18, 20 hours a day, I would just be trying to make money, learn the real estate market, and figure out exactly how to go about. It's very similar to what you're saying. Just create the lifestyle, set the goals, and be able to provide for my family. And I'll finish this by saying my wife and I, since it was just our 5-year anniversary, we got a little bit sentimental when we started talking about, well, what if we stayed in North Carolina? And truthfully, the house we built was about 1,300 square feet, and it was a 3-bedroom house. And if I stayed on that law enforcement salary, we probably would not have been able to have more than 2 kids. So that was pretty disheartening. So the fact that I was able to come up here, increase our income, learn about residual income, it's allowed us to, have more kids.
So if I could bring home just something what you just said, right? To encapsulate the story that you're talking about. Within the last 5 years, You went from A to B. And what people will say commonly is, I'm not sure the sacrifice that Ryan put together is worth it for me. And I say, well, what would the sacrifice be of not doing the sacrifice that Ryan just did? Well, okay, you're 2 kids down. You talk about what's important in life. You wouldn't have those 2 kids. You'd be living paycheck to paycheck. You went through 5 years. Those 5 years were going to pass anyway, but you decided to use them this way. So many times in life, we don't consider the consequences of not sacrificing. And I don't want to belittle this one point here either, where you had the power to do what you're talking about for one reason only. People say, well, money won't make you happy. They'll talk about all kind of dumb things like this that will foster complacency and sitting on your ass and watching TV and not really going out there and swinging at the plate. Okay. But you told me that you had 110,000 due to frugality. Well, that's a pretty old-fashioned idea, to be frugal and live below your means. But because of that, all of a sudden your wife is home, you're here, you're able to work 18 hours a day without an income, building a new life because of that power you gained. You know, and that's how it works. I was that way whenever I was 30, between 30 and 35. That was the challenge of my life, the redirection. And once you're in that new momentum, once everything's working for you, it's a lot easier. It's almost like the ball's going in that direction now. Momentum's an easier thing than redirection. You know, redirection is like that ship in the sea, the big ocean liner that takes 3 miles to turn. You know, did you ever see those things? And then they turn slow and hard, but when they're going in the right direction again, it's easy. And that's kind of how it works with life. Once you get that 5 years behind you, whether it means going back to school, whether it means a new job, whether it means creating another income, there's an end to this. And the end is what you give, but what you get, it stays with you. It stays. Like what you have right now is really interesting to me because you're flying at a much greater pace than I did. That's for sure. Even though I had everything I wanted. You know, people say, well, you went back to Mount Pleasant. I had everything I wanted. We had a good family. We had 2 kids. They had a good upbringing. What do you want? Well, a big house. Okay, well, take away those 2 kids Ryan has. that's what has. They're gone now because Ryan wanted a big house. Like let's not get confused on choices of life and consequences of those choices. You know, so that's what I say. 5 years can change everything, and your life is proof of that.
And I think you're right. And I definitely think doing this was far, hindsight's 2020. Making these moves was less risky than staying where I was at. If you kind of quantify what I have now compared to what I had then. And then along those same lines, I make statements like I was making $10,000 to $20,000 a month. And
yeah, I did notice that. I let that one slide by for you, Ryan. That's quite a nice little income.
Well, and I especially if you're an optimist, like most entrepreneurs kind of have to train themselves to be. I purposefully only remember the good, never remember the bad. But you're right. And you kind of repeating that back to me made me realize, wait a second, there were a lot of months where you're right. I didn't make anything. I was eating up the savings. We were burning through that. And I also casually mentioned working 18 to 20 hours a day, but that's not because I had this newfound like energy to work. It's because I couldn't sleep because I had no idea where my money was going to come from. And I had no idea how I was going to provide anything. And I just, was trying to talk myself out of thinking I was a crazy person for uprooting my family and life on a complete question mark. Right. So
that's right there. Yeah. That's the quote I want from this podcast. Make that clip right there. And I'm putting that on my website because that is the sacrifice of an entrepreneur. You are working for free with the uncertainty of anything, and you still have the audacity to work for free. You're not getting paid sometimes when you're earning that future of yours. You know, I love that, but that didn't stop you. And look where you are.
Right. Right. So it's fun. And to your point, like I shared a lot of my goals with you, and you're right. Financial freedom, it seems like the end goal whenever you are really struggling and aren't sure where that pizza is going to come from. But then you kind of get there and you're like, man, this is cool and all, but I have a lot of work left and I have a lot of time ahead of me to really start making an impact. And it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like at the bottom, uh, you have to take care of yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're pretty much worthless. And you have a very, well, I shouldn't say it like that. Your ability to truly help others is very limited. And then you take care of all your personal needs. Now you have the ability to take care of those closest to you. And then once you have those needs taken care of, you now have more latitude to take care of everybody else. So
It frees you. It frees
yep.
you. The hierarchy, the money frees you to focusing on becoming the best authentic person you can be and fulfilling a meaning outside of yourself. And I'm telling you, there's a feeling of fulfillment that's a requirement in a human being's psyche. It's just how they are. Or else you'll find them going down a path of pleasure and superficiality they'll find out that unoccupied hour is misery eventually. And so what are you going to do? What's next? Always ask that. What's next? What's next? What's next? Play it forward. And then you'll find out what's the meaning of my freedom. And it's a big thing as a driver, because there will be times whenever, like you're talking about, where you're working 18 hours a week because you don't know how, because you're kind of a little afraid. Okay, that's part of it. And the question is, who keeps climbing? And who doesn't just go back to that cop job where you're making 40,000 plus your benefits, plus you guys are looking for some serious benefits when it's all over there. By the age of 55, you're both going to be pretty well set in a teaching degree and a cop and a policeman right there. You're going to be pretty well off at my age. I'm 55 right now. That wasn't good. That wasn't enough. That's not what I want in my life. I'm going to think about what I want in my life. I'm going to carve that out. I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to do things that are uncertain. That's all. That's part of everybody's story there, that does it.
Yep. And, at this point, I'm having the time of my life. Truly, I feel like I'm really dialed in on just all the facets of what I'm doing. And, my cup is full, my personal cup, going back to the Maslow's thing, I'm good. So now I want to see, like, well, if I'm good now, like where is my potential and how can I fill it? So each time now it's just like I think I can do that. Let me see how far I can get, right? And let me see how many people I can bring up along the way with me. And I'm telling you, John, I'm having the time of my life, which is why your book again resonated with me so well, is because that's exactly what this book does. Is if I had to give just one book to somebody that doesn't know how to pay for their pizza, but wants to make massive life improvements and changes, there's no need to cart around 20, 30 books anymore, or be like, well, I can't recommend one book, but here is a bag of books that you should read by the end of next week. Right. Yeah. So your book really just replaces all of that. And it's just like, read it multiple times, embody all of the principles, allow them to kind of soak in and absorb to your identity, and you're going to be set for life. There won't be a single thing that you can't accomplish.
Ryan, I think one of the quotes in the book that I hear a lot is it rings true with what you're talking about right now, that your full potential in this life. You're talking about hierarchies and stuff like that. Your full potential in this life, that's your duty. That's your reason. That's why you're here. It's not an option. Maybe I can reach my full potential. That is your mission. That's your duty. And I think that's what you're talking about. How much more can I do? It's not about greed. It's about fulfilling your mission. Mm-hmm. What can you do? Who knows?
Right. Right. one thing that I heard someone say, I have no idea where it came from, but they're like, what would happen if after you died, you were to meet or come face to face with the version of yourself that was your full potential?
Mm.
Like, well, that's that's discomforting, or
You
motivational.
know, I agree. Les Brown, if you've ever studied some of his work, he does a really good job of saying that. And in my book, like there's a guy who dies in the middle of the book. Like that guy has his dreams left in him. He never got it out of him. The world will never know what only he could have done if only he tried. That kind of stuff. Yeah, that's meaningful. That's life.
Absolutely. Well, truthfully, this has gone on a little bit longer than I expected, but I really appreciate it. This was a fantastic conversation. Is there anything that you wanted to mention or discuss that we haven't hit on yet?
Not really, Ryan. I mean, I said yes to this interview because I wanted to get to know you, and I'm looking forward to a lifelong friendship with you, and watching you chart your own course. So I appreciate so much your book review. I appreciate the heart of an entrepreneur like you, appreciating the heart of an entrepreneur that's wrapped up in that book like me. So yeah, I left my soul in that baby. That book is the personification of my soul. I thank you for recognizing that. So that's enough for me.
Absolutely. And those are big words, especially when there's a part two coming out. So if you left your soul in that one, there's high stakes for this new one.
Ryan, I am not a healthy writer, man. It's I go into a cave and I come out and I dread the idea of starting a new book because it's just to me I just anguish over it and I'm not healthy. Like meaning I don't sit around and I obsess and it's just I I'll be done with this in 2021 and I'll be looking forward to it being done because writing is torturous to me and I'm a slave driver and I'm the slave and I'm the driver and it's just good to get it over with sometimes.
Are you familiar with Stephen Pressfield's
I am
The Art of
the
War?
work of art, the
War,
art of
the
work.
War of Art.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Yeah, the war. Yes, the war of art. It resonates with me. And you know what is there's a couple other ones. Deep Work by Cal Newport resonates with me. And there's another one. Ryan Holiday has one. Perennial Seller resonates with me. It's those guys understand, and they wrote books about just the anguish of trying to just leave your soul in your work. Uh, it's a goofy thing. You got to have a demon in you for you to do this kind of stuff. It's I miss a lot of sunshine sitting here in this basement day after day after day after day, and it's almost like, what am I doing this for? And you cannot not do it. You just get
Right.
driven by a force bigger than yourself. I don't understand it, but it is what it is, and I can tell you there's a lot of pressure on me to make sure that this next book is worthy for the eyes of anybody who's going to do me the honor of their attention for it. It's just so meaningful to me to do that. So I'm trying, brother. I'm trying my best. I promise you that.
Well, I sure do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the book. And for all of you that have not yet read this book, I've got a link in the description below. Please purchase it immediately and read it as fast as you can and really make sure that you embody the principles that are discussed in that book. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon. Thanks.